All right, so just finishing off we're starting off where we left off before here. We have our site kind of set up. We've kind of copied our site file from this previous Revit file in here. I'm not going to worry about bringing these buildings and stuff back in that are here. I mean, if you really wanted to, one thing that I'd recommend is just separating these buildings as a separate linked file, and you could link it back in. Um, if anyone wants me to do that, let me know and I can kind of show you how to do that. But I don't know if it's really that important for our project right now to show that building, especially since we're kind of so far away over here. So I'm just going to leave that alone and not bring that part in. But anyways, we have our building here. So let's go back to our main file here and let's start setting up some views and sheets. So let's click on our sheet button here and let's go to new sheet. Let's go to load, and we want to bring in our 11 by 17 title block. So I actually have been using the load Autodesk families feature recently within Revit. So this is kind of a new feature. So if we go to insert, load Autodesk family. So instead of load family, we're going to load Autodesk family. And if you don't see that there, just do your Revit updates and that will start showing up, because I think everything after 2021 or 2020, they enabled this feature with updates, so it should be there. Sorry, load. Oh yeah, load Autodesk family. So this is really nice because we have a graphical interface. We can see things, and we can also use the search. So I'm just going to go down here to go to title blocks because I know where that is. We're going to bring in our 11 by 17 title block. I think this is a really great sheet size to use, especially for design and iteration and any kind of studio environment. We use 11 by 17 all the way through our design process. And then once we kind of move beyond the design process, we move into a bigger sheet size, but we use it quite a ways through. So let's load this in. And depending on what you're doing here, you might want to modify that sheet. So we can either right click on sheets down here and go to new sheet, or we can go to view and we can click our new sheet button up here. So we can click load our B11 by 17, and the first thing I think everyone's going to notice, this title block is awful. If you're using this to bring into Photoshop or Illustrator, what I recommend is just tabbing over these exterior lines, and we can go up here and pin them. And these are just kind of our title block border. And then everything else in here, we're just going to delete. So we're just going to have a big white kind of blank page here, I guess. So I'm going to load into project and close. We'll load into our project 1 here that we started creating. Let's not save this. I think it's good for you to save it, but I'm just going to do that for efficiency today. So we kind of have a blank page here. And so I highly recommend a lot of design students do this because just it makes it easier to bring into Photoshop and Illustrator and InDesign. It's just not as complicated. So we're just going to drag our first floor over, and we have a ton of stuff going on in here. And let's start cleaning up some stuff. So I'm just going to bring our section lines in. I think for a floor plan purpose, we don't really need to see our trees. And so we can right click and a tree and click hide category. But I think the better way to get in the habit of hiding things is we want to go to VG or go under view, visibility graphics. And so we're just going to click P for planting. We're going to go down to our planting category, and we're just going to uncheck planting and click OK. And so now most of our planting is gone. The next thing I'm going to do is use our border. So we can show our crop region, which the crop region is like a view box, or I mean, I guess crop region is pretty self-explanatory, but we're going to bring in this crop region. So we're just seeing the basics of our site here. And we probably want to change the scale. This looks a little bit small, so let's go up to 1/4 inch. And let's bring this back down onto our sheet. And we'll bring our title up. And I think I've definitely done this in a few videos, but say if, for example, you wanted to take bringing this onto a page a step further, and you really didn't want to have this title on here because you wanted to do that in Illustrator or whatever program, we can click our view box here. And right now it's just called viewport 1. So let's go to edit type, And let's just call this, I'm going to rename this and call this view title. And let's duplicate it and we'll call this no title. And all we have to do is click show title and change that to no. So we've got view title, that title is yes, and no title, which is no. And so now we don't even have a title on here. And I think this is a nice workflow for bringing it into other programs. So here we go. We got this going on. Let's do a few more things in visibility graphics. So let's go to VG and let's go down to walls. We're going to add a poche, a cut pattern. So let's go right here. And if you're wondering how I navigated that quite quickly, as long as you click into where these names are, if you hit the letter you want to go to, and it'll kind of take you down to that place very quickly. We're going to go to solid fill, foreground pattern. And we're going to I'm going to put this at gray. Normally I do either a black or a gray, but you want to have something that kind of adds some punch. So let's do black or gray. Let's click OK. Actually, before I click OK, just a brief explanation here. The background patterns, you don't need to worry about them too much, but what a good explanation of why we want them is if we want to have a double hatch, meaning we wanted to have a cross hatch with a solid fill or something of that sort, so you can have two hatches going on at the same time. So we just generally use foreground pattern. I think there's only like 2 cases where we're using a double hatch. And why did we not cut this? I don't think I was in my sheet. Oh, that's why. So yeah. Let's go here. Sorry, I wasn't in my view, I was in my sheet. So we're going to do this again here. Let's click gray. Click OK. And so now we have some nice filled in lines here. So let's create a few more sheets. I'm just going to do this quickly. I'm going to go new, and I'm just going to hit enter on the keyboard. So we have our first floor. We could do a roof plan. So let's call this roof. Let's call this level 1. Roof level 1. Let's call this elevations. And let's call this sections. Depending on what you're doing, you might need more sheets, but I'm just going to use these ones for now. Another little tip I have is I'm just going to select all of these elevations here in the project browser. And what you can actually do is change the scale before you bring them onto sheets. And I think generally you always want to have your floor plans, elevations, and sections as they exist kind of as a set in the same scale. And the idea behind that is when you work between these different views, your floor plans, elevations, sections, that consistency of scale really helps you orient yourself within those elements. So again, make sure you have the same scale for these pieces. So, all right. And yeah, it looks like we might need 1 sheet per view here. Not a problem though. So let's turn on our crop box. And another little tip I have is I often go to edit crop box, I delete the crop box, and then I'll just grab a new box here, and then I'll just add it in this area. And it just kind of saves time kind of bringing in all those elements. And really we don't need this to go much below here. So a couple things, obviously we're a little bit farther back on our elevation and we don't really see the whole building. So there's a few things we can do here. So I'm going to double click into our view. Let's go to VG. One thing we can do is actually go down to planting and make planting 100% transparent. And I think this is sometimes a good tip to show your building, but I think a good rule of thumb for most people is you never want to cover your building with plants when it comes to drawings. It's a little bit distracting. So you always want your building to come to the forefront. So even if you do have trees that are beside or in front of your building, you either want to make it 100% transparent or completely hide it. So this tree, for example, I'm going to completely hide. And we'll just leave some of the trees on the borders there. And I think that's, again, just helpful to clean up your drawings a little bit. So let's do a few more things. Let's go back into VG. We're going to go down to Topography. And this is another great tip. We're going to actually go to cut pattern and change this to solid white. And that way we're going to get rid of that ugly kind of white hatch there. And then I'm going to change this cut line to be a level number 5 line weight. And that just, it's going to make it a much thicker line weight. So if we go up here to this line weight button at the top and turn that on, you'll see we have a nice thick line. And it seems to kind of drop and disappear a little bit. I think this is just because the topography is dropping away. So we can go to VG again and just go down to topography, and we can add our surface lines to also be number 5. And that way we'll kind of get that full cut. You also might not want to do that, but we have another strategy to kind of fix this up. So we're kind of far back from our site, from our building. And so we can go to our site file, and these little arrows right here, this is, if you click the arrow, this is your actual cut line of where it's cutting that topography from. So we can bring this arrow up closer to our building. And that way when we're cutting our topography, it's a much closer line to where our actual building is. So like that. That's setting up that view. I'm not going to go through setting up all the different views, but I want to show a few other graphical things here. So that's looking a lot better. Let's go to our sections, and let's place one of our sections on here. And so same thing with sections. We can go to VG, we can go to walls, and we can poche our walls in gray. And so you'd want to do this in sections. You want to do this with walls, floors, roof. So I'm just going to click R for roofs. I don't have a roof on here right now, but if I did, that's kind of what you'd want to do. Floors. And I mean, you probably want to do ceilings as well. I think ceilings are maybe a little bit more of an intermediate thing to use in Revit, but let me just add ceilings in there as well. Solid fill, gray. Let's go down to topography and make our topography white as well. You can definitely do your topography different colors. Another good one would be black, and that way you have a very heavily contrasting. Sorry, I want to change the line weight here to 5. You have a very heavily contrasting topography. Just completely up to the stylistic intentions, I guess, that you're working on with your project. But yeah, anyway, so we got a section here. Another kind of tip and I guess criticism I have for Revit is often these section tags and view tags are very large. And I guess another thing, since we moved this section box over, I really don't like these elevation tags. So we can go to VG, we can go to annotations, and we can go down to elevation here and just turn that off, and it won't show these elevation tags in floor plan. So, I mean, even those elevation tags, I often find them too big for the scale that we often work at, especially in architecture school. So we can change these heads. This is something that's kind of been bugging me for a little bit with drawings. Is just, these heads are a little bit more technical and they don't necessarily reflect what we want to do with these. So let's go down here and let's edit these heads. So unlike most things in Revit, when you click on this section, it doesn't really give you the option to edit this head. If we were to go to edit type here, we can actually see that we have a section head here, and it's actually using the section head called section head filled, and it's using the tail as section tail filled. So we want to find that section head filled family to be able to edit it. So what I like to do is, not what I like to do, but where to find that is down here in Project Browser. You'll actually notice there's a tab called Families. So let's click that, and we're going to actually go into Annotation Symbols, and I'm just going to type S for section. So we have our section head filled here. So let's go here and let's right click on it and go to Edit. And so this is how we edit non-editable elements, or elements that don't appear to be editable in Revit. Is just you have to find them in the annotation symbols, or families for that matter. So let's do a little bit of cleanup here. So we're going to delete a bunch of stuff and we're going to make this essentially a triangle. So let me just kind of draw what we're going to do here. I'm probably going to make this about half the size. And we're just going to make I'm just going to grab this, use the mirror tool, and that way it's symmetrical. And we're just going to make a small little section line like this to keep it simple. So let's click here, and that's solid fill black. So let's actually get rid of the rest of this stuff that we have here. I'm just going to hit HH for this a second and delete this number. And let's bring that back. So now we have this little arrow. I want to bring on the option to have some text. So we're going to click label here. And there's a few different things we have for labels. So we have reference, detail number, view name, sheet number. Let's go to view name and just keep this simple. View name and click OK. And I'm just going to make this right on the same plane as our section. And so let's do a couple other things. Let's go to edit type for the text here. We're going to rename this. We're going to call this 1/16. I find 1/16 is a good text size across the board for a lot of drawings that people are working on. So it's a little bit smaller. Right now this text is centered. We want to make this not centered, so we want to make this left justified. And then we're going to bring this so it's basically right beside our little tag here. And let's click load into project. And actually, sorry, let's click file save first because we don't want it to be saved as the same name. So save as family. And we're going to call this, let me just put this in the proper folder here. So we're going to call this section head. I'm going to call this section head triangle fill. And let's click load into project and close. Let's load it into our project. And nothing happens. And so what we want to do is click our section again. We want to click edit here. And we want to go to section head. And so we could actually create a new parameter here. And so let's duplicate this. And we're just kind of creating a new setting, I guess you could say. So if you wanted to use that more construction drawing one here, it still is there. But let's just call this triangle filled. And let's change the section head to that new one we created. Up to you what you want to do with the tail. I'm going to do no tail for this. So we're just going to have that one section head here. And it's just called section 1. And I guess my little tip with this now is instead of calling this section 1, we could just call it A. So it's just A. Keep it simple. We can also make it so we can turn off that text if you want. But I think it's fine to leave for now. I mean, if you bring that into Photoshop or Illustrator, you can certainly do that. But maybe just to show you quickly, we can go into our section head triangle fill. Let's click edit one more time. And we can click this view name and we can actually add a visibility parameter. So right now it's checked. So if you see this little faint box here, so let's click that and we can add text visibility. And I'm just going to change the group to visibility. Or actually, let's change it to text, I guess. And we can make this type, that's fine. Click OK. Click load into project and close. I am doing things a little bit fast, but hopefully you can kind of go back through and slow me down or kind of skip through depending on what you need. But now what we can do is we can go here and right click on our section head triangle and go to type properties. And now we have a button to check or uncheck for that text, depending on if you want it. So that cleans up quite a few things. Hopefully that helps with everyone setting up their sheets and getting this information on there. Certainly let me know if you have more questions, and I can definitely do more videos.